Jim Duke Radio Network. A rational voice in a world of conspiracy. Jim Duke Perspective.
Hey, Darren, how's it going?
Jim, hey, doing very good, thanks.
All right, we don't mean to ruin everybody's fun, like every year. You know, you get the Christian Christmas apologetics defending their meaningful reason for celebrating at this time. Now, we're going to go into some of the debunking next week of their rebuttals to the criticisms. I'm not saying everybody's got to abandon this holiday, forget about it, everything. You got to make up your own decisions. I'm not judging each person. I'm just sharing some of the facts for people that are saying that Christmas is not related to the pagan holidays. Okay? Now, when I say pagan, I want to clarify because we have some pagans that listen to this show. I'm not talking about people demeaningful. Like, I'm not talking down against people. Pagan is sort of a belief system, a polytheistic in some cases belief system. I do generalize, though, and I lump them into anything that's in contrast to monotheism, anything that's in contrast to Christianity, because the Bible classifies paganism as anything that's not Jewish. You know, when the Jews were talking about in the Bible, talking about the pagans or the heathen, as they put it. It's not a derogatory term so much as it is a description of those that believe in worldly religions, like they honor or worship nature, worship aspects of nature, where we worship the creator of nature. There's the difference. So when we say pagan, we're saying basically not us. But then again, in all truth, even secular people that don't believe in Christianity or, Jesus Christ, could be considered pagan in our eyes because, they're worldly too. So it's a whole blanket of those that basically are worldly religions type of things. So when I'm talking about paganism as a religion, I'm talking about the festivals and rituals of those that are pagan or associated. It doesn't mean everybody that's evil or anything, because there's pagans that just are nature-loving individuals.
May not be they're evil or anything.
Right,
just,
exactly. And I just want to differentiate between that. But I want to make a comparison with Saturnalia and Christmas, because our Christian fellows try to defend it and saying that Christmas is not pagan, and their reason is very, very vague and very, very misleading and very, very weak. They say there's no sources that say that Christmas is associated with paganism, because they said, obviously, we worship the birth of Christ, right? So how can it be pagan, right? That's their biggest argument. And you know me, Darren, I like to tackle some of the arguments that people have. Even when you bring up stuff, I say, you say it's proof. I got to see what the proof is and analyze what you really consider as proof. Because the proof of Christmas is that we celebrated it for years, and it's always been related to the lights and the greenery of new things of Christ, and they kind of vaguely skim over where did those origins even get associated with. So I'm just going to basically talk about Saturnalia a little bit. You ever hear of Saturnalia?
I've heard of that name.
Okay, it's the Roman festival back in the days before Christ, into like up to the 4th century or so, where it was a mid-December festival honoring the agriculture god Saturn before the winter solstice, which was celebrated on December 25th. The Roman festival started and they did have the Roman Greco calendar. So it was December 17th or so, up till like 7 days. So it went up to like the 23rd or 4th.
Okay.
So the Saturnalia was now, if you remember in the Bible, it talks about Saturn. Do you know that?
Yes.
Do you know where it is?
Well, I know there's the gospel and the stars.
Yeah.
What book though? I know it's probably Isaiah. If I had to take a guess.
Amos 5:26.
Mm.
It says, "You have borne the tabernacle of Moloch and Shion, your images, the star of your God, which you made for yourself." That word Shion, I'm probably not even pronouncing it right. Shion in Hebrew.
Chion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a term meaning Saturn.
Wow.
They worshipped the god Saturn even back when. Now, in all reality, you could take any of these gods and kind of just synthesize them back to the god of agriculture, which was, what was the first god, the Babylonian god of agriculture? Baal.
Baal, of course.
Yes, of course.
Wow.
So everything kind of relates back to that. And then you had Nimrod, which was taking on the form of Baal on earth. He wanted to be honored and worshipped. So all these things kind of equate. And then he wanted to be like, he was the closest to honoring the sun god and wanted to be likened to the sun god. Well, all these things are related.
That would be mythos too.
Yes, exactly. So all these things kind of correlate together. But the things that we have to take with this are where the aspects of Christmas, of gift giving and the greenery and the lights come about. It did not come because of Jesus Christ.
Right.
It came as an adoption, counterfeiting the festival of Saturnalia. And I'm going to show you how that is. Now, not everything in Saturnalia got translated to Christianity in the Christmas. Okay? So we have to be careful. They'll say because of that, it's not the same thing. The related things along with Saturnalia have been adopted for what we got to know as Christmas. They offered gifts and sacrificed to the gods during the winter sowing season. So gift giving was a practice in order to appease the gods.
Yeah. So the gifts today that we're given, it's a perpetuation of that. It's a satanic act.
Right.
It boils down to it.
But Christians will say it's depicting giving gifts to the King, to God, to Jesus.
You can say anything you want, but the reality
we're going to talk about that next week because just because the Magi gave gifts to Jesus doesn't mean that that's the reason why we all give gifts to each other, that we should be offering to God. But that they did it in Saturnalia as an offering, as a replacement offering to the god. Now, by the late, in the late Roman Republic, like a couple hundred BC to about, close to 30 BC, the festival expanded to 7 days or so, leading right up to December 23rd and 4th. And then 25th was honoring the unconquerable sun. That was the name given to the rebirth of Saturn because it was adopted as his birthday. Now, this is the difference, but although this is also similar. During Saturnalia, work and business came to a halt. What do we do on Christmas? We close everything. Right?
Yep.
Schools and courts and laws were closed. Normal social patterns were suspended. People, now get this, for those that say that Christians adopted their own rituals to honor Christ, people in Saturnalia before Christ, they decorated their homes with wreaths and greeneries and lighting lights and candles and adorning trees.
Wow.
So tell me that came from Christianity first.
None of it.
No.
Every last bit of Christmas it doesn't glorify God at all. Just
no.
The
well, they
opposite.
turn it around to do that, and that's fine if they want to say, "Oh, we turn around, we honor Jesus anyway." That's fine, but they have to be honest that they didn't get it from Christianity or even the practice of the early church. I'm going to prove that in a second. So during this time, they had a kind of a role reversals where all the slaves would become the leaders, and they'd sit them at the head of the table, and the masters served them for the days. like a mockery thing. The slaves were given a little bit of relaxation. Practices were suspended of all morality, and people engaged in gambling, singing, drunkenness, raging madness, debaucheries, sexual behaviors. Everything was excused. Laws didn't prevent anything. These are the aspects that weren't part of Christmas. There was a mock king chosen as the mock leader of Saturnalia. And they chose, I think they did a coin ritual. They put a coin in a cake, and whoever got the coin would be the mock leader. And the leader was called the Lord of Misrule. He was mischievous, and he would play tricks on the rest of the people, becoming mischievous, and often insulting guests, wearing crazy clothes, chasing the women around. He was to act crazy. And that's how they knew, oh, that's the mock king this year. Oh, we don't do that. But now the idea is that he was ruling over chaos. And this is all to worship the Saturn god. Now, as the Romans, this is where it became synonymous with Christmas. As the Romans took over nations, their traditions also spread. They spread their cultures. And as Christianity was getting popularized, the pagans were rivaling against the Christians. But soon after, the Romans adopted Christianity, especially with Constantine and stuff. And the Christians were expected to partake too. So they often paganized or Christianized pagan holidays. And Christmas was one of them. Therefore, all the imagery was redirected towards Jesus to synthesize with the actual festival of Saturnalia, changing the names and basically they just changed Saturnalia to Christmas. That's thanks to the Roman Empire emperors and the popes and such. Now, this is from now a lot of Christians will say there are no sources that say Christmas came from paganism or Saturnalia. There's plenty of sources.
Obviously,
we have the Encyclopedia Britannica, which quoted from Oxford University encyclopedias and dictionaries and such, and there's plenty of books of documents. Now, the one thing they can't do, Darren, is there's not like one place that describes all of Saturnalia per se. There's like bits and pieces of writings that we find depicting each part of Saturnalia. So that part, they're right. But as far as adopting it for Christianity, for Christmas, that is absolutely adopted from this festival. Why is it even around this time that we do it? Yeah. Because it's picked according to the winter solstice and the god of closely related to the birth of Christ, which is the birth of the unconquerable sun. The fact that this is from the Encyclopedia Britannica, the fact that Christmas was celebrated on the birthday of the unconquerable sun gave the season a solar background connected with January, even the Roman New Year, when houses were decorated with greenery and lights and presents were given to children and the poor. Concerning the gift candles, Romans had a story that an old prophecy gave the earliest inhabitants heads to Hades, offered to Saturn. But the Latins said they interpreted this wrongly, possibly because the same word used for lights is used for man, and it's not meaning human heads. It means just lights lit for honoring the unconquerable sun.
Right.
Okay. Now, Pliny the Younger, he was a disciple of the disciples. He said, when I retire to this garden home, I fancy myself even being miles away to take account for the feast of Saturnalia. And during this time, he wanted to to go to his studies uninterrupted, and often closed off his walls so that he didn't hear the ruckus from the worship of it. Roman philosopher Seneca the Younger wrote, "It is now the month of December when the greatest part of the city is in a bustle. Loose reins are given to public dissipation. Everywhere you may hear the sound of great preparations as if there were some real difference between the days devoted to Saturn and those for transacting business. Were you here, I would willingly confer with you as to the plan of our conduct, whether we should eve in our usual way or to avoid singularity, both take a better supper and throw off the toga." So they did honor it and they did recognize it. So this is not just imaginary by people who say that we're trying to ruin their fun. Now, next week, we're going to kind of take apart an analysis of this guy that I guess he's puts videos out, and we're going to take apart some of his claims that the Christian myths, or the Christmas myths, that it was pagan. He tries to rip it apart. But like I said, their arguments are weak. I have to ask this, though. I would rather Christians be honest and admit that it's not the birth of Christ so that they don't disqualify themselves as putting off on something that's not. In other words, why would they pick this time of year if it wasn't related to something else? And why this time of year?
Good question.
And they have to pick the birth of somebody else. It's like saying, Darren, let's celebrate Jesus' birth on the Day of the Dead rising, and let's do Easter on the Day of the Dead rising. Let's do Easter on October 31st, on the Day of the Dead. And as they're raising up the dead, see, why didn't they think of that? They could have just did. It's moving the calendar around. Now, why do they have to even celebrate Christ on the birthday of a false god? Why do they even have to celebrate the birth of Christ in that way? Now,
most likely he was born in September, by the way, too. So.
Yeah, right, exactly. In September. We know the date is correlated on the solstice calendar with the pagan rituals. So it is absolutely pagan that they picked that day. Secondly, the early church did not recognize his birthday. They say, well, the Bible talks about his birthday, and they honored it too. Yeah, the one time when Jesus was born. They didn't have a yearly celebration of it, though. They did have a yearly celebration of the resurrection. They did kind of keep that in memory.
Right.
But they didn't do the birth of Christ. That was made up after. So the date is absolutely chosen deliberately to correlate with the god of agriculture, greenery, and the decor, with the ornaments and decor and the greenery and candles and gift giving are all part of the Roman festivals.
I heard even down to Rudolph's red nose. I forgot the exact meaning of it, but I remember somebody was pointing out how it was actually evil. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about that, so I'm not going to elaborate on it. But
right.
And I'm not trying to ruin the fun of people who want to take this time to honor Christ. Any time's a good time, but why do you have to mimic the same decor, the same characteristics of the cultural tradition of the ancient festival? Why? I don't care if people want to honor Christ at this time, but my point is, why then do you have to use their decor for your decor? It's a factual that it's the ritual that came from the pagan culture, and that Christianity adopted it to fit in. They counterfeited the pagan holiday. They only changed the name to appease it. Now, does that mean that we have to get away from all paganism? See, this is where the misnomer of those that rebuttal us say, oh, if that's the case, you got to get away from everything that's pagan. No, we're just saying, why are you having to impose having the pagan elements in your festival that you want to call for Christ? and have the same aspect. Even the cooking of the ham was part of the Saturnalia. You know that?
Really? I didn't know that.
The pig was sacrificed. Yep.
Wow.
And it was given. So we do all the things that are a part of a Saturnalia for those aspects. We don't do the mock king. We don't do these other things. But now, would this mean, Darren, that if I invited you over to dinner on December 25th, you have to say, no, pagan, no, close your doors, lock your doors so you can't come out? Does that mean you have to hide?
No, not hide.
Does that mean you have to not eat that day?
No.
No. So if I invited you over, you'd come over, would you?
Sure.
All right, come on over. Now we might have a dinner, a little dinner with me and my wife. I don't know what we're doing, but we do often gather at this time. Does that mean I'm partaking in Saturnalia? No. It just means, what does it mean, Darren? It means, you got muted? You're muted for a second.
It just means you're just another day.
No, it just means I love to eat. I'm not going to give up a dinner. That's all I mean.
That's right. Just because somebody else does it. You know?
I've been fortunate, though. My in-laws respect my view, and they do not bring up Christmas. We just get together on that day. Mm-hmm. They do not say Merry Christmas to me or us. We don't bring it up. They know how I feel about it, and they honor that. Mm-hmm. These are my in-laws.
Nice. Yeah. Makes it easier for you. Yeah.
But they do it because they understand what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good.
Believe it or not.
Some people don't.
And some people don't. Now, I would say this also to sum this up, Darren, because this is going to be a short episode. I want to get next week into the rebuttals that people have. I would say this, that if Christians say they want to, you know how they claim, do you remember, I remember a time when I used to say, we got to bring Christ back into Christmas.
That's what we used to say.
Remember that?
20 years ago.
Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Bring Christ back into Christmas? Jesus, name's in the festival. Why are we letting the secularists take him out of Christmas?
Right.
Now I'm doing what they're saying, Darren. I want Christ out of Christmas.
Yep. I think God wants it out of too, because he knows it's all, nothing to do with the birth of Christ. So.
Yeah, and we don't want to celebrate in their debaucheries or perversions or drunkenness. The paganisms are actually the rightful owners of this holiday, not the Christians.
Yep.
So you know what Christians told me? So what? If we're going to take over a pagan holiday then, how do you like that? Yeah, but you have no right to demand they get squeezed out. It's their holiday first. You're just adopting it. So don't demand that they take the pagan out of Christmas, out of Saturnalia, any more than you should say they took the Christ out of Christmas. Because he was never supposed to be in it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It wasn't originally about Christ. It was about Saturn. So the worldly culture actually has the correct attitude on this. Yes, the drunken, even the secularist, even the atheists who celebrate Christmas, or let's say this, that indulge in the festivities at this time, they have more of a right to than I believe Christians do to claim it as a Christian holiday, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does.
I'm not trying to steal this away from Christians because they say, how dare you? We still want to give gifts as part of giving. It's part of loving one another. That's fine. You're doing it at a time when the festival demanded it for Saturnalia. That's fine. But don't say it's Christian first. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It makes sense.
Yeah. Find your own traditional holidays, not the Roman festivals. You know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to say on this one. So to everyone, we want to wish everybody a Merry Saturnalia. Don't we? No, we don't. We don't want to bring it up anymore. We don't want to honor that any more than we do bringing Christ into something that's profane. You know, the Bible talks about that too, bringing the holy into the profane. Isn't that kind of likened what they're doing?
Absolutely. In fact, it also says, what fellowship hath light with darkness? What else?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But we'll overlook it. You know why? Because it's a pseudo name that we given it to honor something that other than what it was originally intended, which is the Saturn god.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, my website is jimdukeperspective.com, and check us out on all the apps, any of your favorite players, on all the podcasts, and share this information with your friends. We just definitely need the shares. We're losing ground here. We're hovering around the same numbers. We're not, and they're getting low. They're in the lower range. They used to be a lot more. And since I lost my YouTube channel the first time with like 4,000 or so subscribers I was building, I haven't been able to build up on that. But I also have the YouTube channel back up. But it's a more like trailers and hints of the shows. It shows the shows in audio form at Jim D Perspective, I think is the other name. So check us out there, and God bless. We'll see you next time.